Welcome to episode 139 of the No More Wasted Days podcast. I'm your host, Sarah, and today I'm going to be talking all about my journey to finally becoming 1 year free from THC. That has a nice rhyme to it, doesn't it? In all seriousness, though, I will be referring to THC as THC, weed, marijuana, and probably other names that are more slang terms as I go through this, because I will just be trying to talk to it as I am comfortable talking about it. And sometimes I feel uncomfortable when I say things like cannabis, because that's not what I call it. So bear with me as I call it many different names throughout this episode, although I will try to stick to mainly THC or weed. Also, I want you to know that this is an episode that makes me feel really vulnerable, and it was actually a big motivator for me to get to 1 year because I knew I would finally record an episode when I hit 1 year. I'm honestly really nervous that some people may judge me when they hear this because they may think, I thought she was sober. I thought she was 100% sober. And now I find out that at times she was smoking weed. So that means she was alcohol free. And that's one of the reasons I'm nervous to put this out there. But it's something that I really struggled with after I quit drinking. And I'm going to dive into all of that. But first, I want to backtrack just a little bit and talk about what we discussed on last week's episode, which is when we learned that Heather is leaving the podcast as a permanent co-host. So I want you to know what to expect going forward in the No More Wasted Days podcast before I dive into today's topic. First, I want you to know that there will no longer be any shorty episodes airing on Friday. It may happen from time to time, but I am not going to be consistent with that anymore. And that is because I will be taking on all of the research for these Tuesdays episodes. When I had Heather as a co-host, she was able to research half of those, and I was able to research the other half. And that meant some of the load was taken off of me so I could put more into those shorty episodes. Now, if I find out that there are time periods in my life where I have more time to put into some shorty episodes as well, I will still put those out there. But for right now, I'm going to focus only on the longer Tuesday episodes. Second, I think I'm going to try to give you more of a peek into what's happening in my life and relate more of the episode topics to what's coming up in my sobriety journey and how it makes me feel and how I know I can relate it to yours no matter where you are on your journey. Next, I'm hoping to bring in more guest interviews. Some of them will be with personal friends that I know that are sober, and some of them will be with other sober content creators. This is something that I have been honestly very nervous to do for a number of reasons. I'm nervous that the tech won't work. I'm nervous that people won't want to be on my podcast. I'm nervous that I will be a terrible interviewer, etc., etc. So I'm going to get out of my head and I'm going to invite some people on to be guests on the podcast because I know there are some incredible sober content creators out there that can share their stories. And I have some incredible friends who are sober that can share their story. And I know that this will also allow me to still have that conversational energy that I loved having with Heather. Lastly, I want you to know that I still promise to offer practical strategies, inspiration, science-backed research, and of course, real talk about my alcohol-free journey and now my weed-free journey. The heart of this show is going to remain the same. I want to continue to help listeners to live a life full of no more wasted days. Now let's dive into the main topic of this episode. Just yesterday, which was September 16th, the day before I'm recording this episode, I hit 1 year weed-free. Now, this was not my first attempt at quitting, and I had actually quit for a long period of time before this time, and I will talk about that. And it had been for short periods of time before that. But you'll be able to do the math as I go through. But when I first quit drinking, I was what they call Cali sober. I don't like that term. I just never identified with it for whatever reason. I really identified with alcohol free. That felt more true to my journey. And I truly felt free without alcohol in my life. And I did use weed as a way to still get the buzz. I used weed as a way to still numb out. I hate admitting that. And a way to de-stress. But you know what? It didn't give me a hangover. It definitely was the lesser of two evils when I would weigh how it affected my everyday life. It also was definitely a form of harm reduction for me, and it made it so much easier for me to quit drinking. But in all honesty, it made me feel like a liar to all of my viewers, to all of my people who follow me on social media. Here I was celebrating about being alcohol free and living this life free from this substance, but I had another substance holding me back. And I really didn't think it was holding me back for a very long time. I didn't see it as a problem until it was. Kind of like alcohol, right? All of a sudden, I was like, this is no longer serving me. And it was definitely by watching other content creators and other people share their story about being 100% sober. And that looked very appealing to me because I also followed people on social media that admitted that they still smoked weed. And they were very proud of the fact that they still smoked weed. And I was really going back and forth like, okay, do I become the person that's 100% sober, or do I just come out about the fact that I smoke weed and I can help people quit drinking and live this alcohol-free lifestyle, but a Cali sober lifestyle? And every time I would think, well, this is the thing, I'm going to share it with everybody, it felt wrong to me. I didn't want to offer people this path of, hey, quit this one way of numbing out, but here's this other way that I personally think is a little safer. Because I knew in my heart of hearts that it wasn't safer and it wasn't doing me any favors. So I didn't want to offer that as a solution to people. So I decided it was time if I was going to live this life where I talked about being alcohol free and how much clarity it had given me, I was going to take it to the next level and be 100% sober. Now, huge disclaimer here. If you are Cali sober and you're like, this is what works for me, please do not feel like I'm saying this is the path you need to choose. You need to be 100% sober as well. I really do think that it's the lesser of two evils, but there is some research out there and more is coming out that really is starting to show that maybe it's not. But that is for you to find out, right? I will definitely be sharing more about how I did this and what has changed in my life. And I know from talking to my daymakers that this is something that a lot of people are interested in learning more about, because it's actually pretty common for people to quit drinking but still smoke weed and then feel like, okay, now I'm ready for that next step. So besides that being a sign that I really wanted to change my behavior, besides feeling like, oh, I'm showing up and I'm a fraud, I'm a liar, I could also see all these old patterns starting to resurface in my personality that were things that happened with me with alcohol. First, I was starting to think about it all the time. It was almost like the countdown to when I could smoke weed at the end of the day. Like, let's wrap up what we're doing so I can cook dinner and I can take a hit off the pen and relax while I'm doing it. It was just a constant nagging thought for me. I was also starting to sneak it. My husband had quit before me, like he tends to do. He always figures it out just a little bit before me. And he said he didn't really care if I kept doing it, but I would get all in my head that he really did care that I was doing it. I would become paranoid because that's what weed does to you. And I started sneaking it. I would go off to our room, take a hit off the pen and be like, oh, he doesn't know. And when I talked to him about it, he actually didn't know, but I knew. And it was making me feel so guilty. And another thing it was doing to me is it was making me not want to go places so I could just stay home and be high. On the weekends, Ryan would kind of say, hey, let's go do these things. And maybe if it was going hiking, I was like, hey, that'll work because I can just take the pen with me, take a hit on it before we take off. It's all good. But if it was any type of socializing, I didn't want to do it because I don't like to socialize when I'm high. I like to be alone. I like to clean my house. I like to do things when I'm high, but on my own. And that meant if I got invited to go do something, I didn't want to go do it. And that also leads me to something else where I noticed why it was a little harder for me to quit weed than alcohol. And it was harder in a lot of ways, which you're going to hear. But one of those was that weed felt like my secret weapon for getting a lot of things done. On the weekend, I would go off to our shed where I hid my flower and I would smoke a little bowl, and all of a sudden I was ready to do so many chores. I was ready to clean the yurt, clean the trailer, do all the chicken chores, duck chores, just get it all done. And it just felt like it gave me this endless energy. What it really did was give me this endless paranoia, anxiety feeling. I know that sounds so crazy. Like, why would I do something that made me feel like that? And that feeling would make me not want to stop moving. So I would just keep cleaning and listening to podcasts, and it just made me feel kind of invincible. Like, I can get so much done because those are all chores. Well, besides the chicken and duck chores, because I do actually like those, but cleaning, I don't enjoy it. And it was like my secret weapon. So if you come visit me, which, I would prefer for you to come over unannounced, but if you came over unannounced, my house isn't clean anymore. But I'm 100% sober. And that has become more important to me. So let's talk about the times that I tried to quit and I failed. This mimics so many people's alcohol-free journey that I couldn't understand, because when I finally decided to quit drinking, I was all in and it felt kind of easy. I hate to say that, but I think that I was just so excited about quitting, and I was seeing like, oh my gosh, being hangover free is so much better, and I don't have this guilt anymore or this anxiety anymore. And also I was still smoking weed, so I had like a little assist, right? And so ditching alcohol felt okay. It felt like I can do this. This is fine. Now, I had attempted to quit alcohol before and I wasn't successful, but all of those times, like, my heart wasn't in it. I knew I wasn't quitting. I knew I was doing a break and then going back to it. And even if I had to white knuckle it through a break and then go back to it, that was fine. Like, in my mind, that was fine. I'm kind of digressing here, but when I finally quit drinking, I was so ready. I was like, this is a toxic poison. I no longer want it in my life. My life is so elevated without it. Now, weed was so much harder. I'd quit for a few days and then I'd go again. And I would decide, okay, I need to slow down. So I'd make rules. It was so much like my drinking. And maybe I'd go like a week. And then I remember going 2 weeks, and I actually then visited with somebody who was alcohol free. And then they started talking about, I still take edibles. I still hit the weed pen from time to time, but for me, it's so much better. And hearing that made me go, okay, well, I don't really need to do this. So I was at 2 weeks. I got home from that visit, and right away I decided I'm going to smoke some weed. And I remember I did. And I was like immediately like, oh my gosh, now I remember this doesn't feel as good as I like it. Because that was the thing too. I was getting high and I didn't actually like it anymore. I was getting high, and more often than not, I was getting that paranoid feeling, that anxiety feeling, and I didn't like that. So then I decided I have to start a longer streak. I have to get serious about this. And it was at that time where I actually started posting about it just a little bit on social media. I was like, you know what? If I put myself out there and start telling people like, I don't smoke weed anymore, I used to, but I don't, I'm going to be so on this path. Nothing's going to stop me. And it worked for a while, and you're going to find out how long. And to get myself going on that, I actually did a lot of the things that I did when I quit drinking. I found a podcast that somebody did about quitting smoking weed. I found a Facebook group about quitting smoking weed, and I started tracking my days. All these things were things that I knew I did when I quit, and I was like, I can do this. Now, I'm going to tell you a few other things I did when it stuck that I think made more of a difference, but those are the things that I did this first time. So that first time when I entered a long stretch, I hit somewhere around 200. I must have been like 250 days. I wish that I would have taken a picture of my tracker. Like, I wish I would have known before I deleted it. But that's where I was, 200 to 250 days. Like, I was getting close to a year. And the thing is like, I wasn't feeling a huge benefit. I was actually starting to have a lot of anxiety. A lot. And I was like, I thought that quitting smoking was going to help this. Now, after doing research, I have found that this is the time when sometimes the relapse will happen with quitting smoking weed. And it's actually really normal. It takes your brain a lot more long to balance, and those anxiety levels to balance. And I'll tell you what I did differently this time when it actually stuck. But that time, I was starting to have this terrible anxiety. I talked to my doctor about it. She put me on birth control pills. She's like, you have perimenopause. Like, you're in perimenopause. You're not producing enough estrogen from time to time. Let's just put you back onto a birth control so your hormone levels are at an even level. Well, this made me feel very unseen. This made me feel not taken seriously. And I was like, this lady didn't even listen to me. Like, I didn't want to go on birth control. I had been watching a lot of people, a lot of doctors on Instagram, and I knew I needed like hormone replacement therapy or something else. So then I decided to research if weed produced estrogen, and It does. Like, I don't even know the research I found. Like, I was looking for that confirmation bias for sure. Like, I don't know what the article was where I saw this, but I was like, okay, I'll start smoking weed again. And my husband was even like, you should probably just start smoking weed again. He's like, I never noticed it had a very terrible impact on you. So why don't you just start up again? And I was kind of like, okay, I'm going to do it. So I went to the dispensary. I got myself a new cartridge and I got myself some flour. And I got myself some edibles. I went on a little shopping spree and I was like, okay, I'm going to have some boundaries and rules with this though. The flour is only for the weekends, which is what I tended to do anyway. And the pen is only for the evenings and not every evening. And I need to make sure I'm taking a break. Well, that all went out the window pretty quick. It's like I smoked it. I went right back to it and I was just so back in it so fast. Like, so back into my regular thinking about it all the time, using it to help me get a million things done on the weekends and hiding it from my husband so he wouldn't know how much I was smoking, bringing it along when I was going on outings with my kids and trying to do it undercover. Like, it is so embarrassing to talk about, but I was just thrown right back into it. And then finally, 1 year ago on September 16th, I quit. And I feel much different about it this time. I've hit my 1 year mark and I can see that I'm a better parent without it. I can see that I'm a better business owner without it. I can see that I'm a better wife without it this time. But what did I do this time that made it feel different? Because that last time I did it, it wasn't necessarily hard once I got out of the daily habit, but I never found a lot of joy. And this time I have found some joy. Not as much joy as I did when I quit drinking, but I have found some. So here's a few things I did that maybe will work for you. First, I stopped while I was out of town. This might work for you if you know you're taking a trip where you know it won't be a part of that trip. This could be a good time because it gets you out of the habit somewhere else where you're farther away. I've actually had people do this at the beginning of the 30-day alcohol-free challenge. They take a trip somewhere where they know they're not going to be tempted to drink, and it's a good way for them to kickstart. Now, I did this, and I was actually on, go figure, the Sober Adventure Retreat with all of my amazing Sober Tahoe baddies. Now, for that retreat, it was alcohol-free focused. I'm just going to put that out there. But some of the ladies were also new to ditching weed, and they were sharing their story, and it was very inspiring to me and enlightening to me. And I was kind of like, maybe I can do this again, because I had gone back to smoking weed and I was pretty regular with it again, but it had only been for 5 months. And I was seeing myself fall into those old patterns again. And I was like, oh my gosh, you have such an addictive personality. What made you think you could handle this? So hearing the other ladies talk about it made me, one, feel like I wasn't alone. I was watching all these ladies that are such badasses and they have their life totally together. And so for them to admit, like, yeah, I'm working on quitting smoking weed too, and I'm really hoping that this trip will help me with that. And I was like, whoa. So while I was on that trip, I started a new tracker. And I thought, you know what? I've already got so many days under my belt. Why not keep going? And I got home and I started a new affirmation. And the affirmation is, my sobriety is important to me and I will put in the work each day to keep it going. I was no longer talking about being alcohol free. I was talking about being sober. I also started looking up AA groups. I never actually went to one, but I was really like, I need to find a sober community. And I was always kind of turned off by AA because I was like, they're going to tell me not to smoke weed too. And I don't want to hear that. And I was like, maybe I can find a community and that will work too. Now, I didn't actually go to one. You guys, I have so many excuses and they're probably just all excuses. But number one is there's only 2 in my small town and they were not working with my kids' schedule and my schedule. So maybe as my schedule opens up, that's something I'm going to do. But I do have my day makers that I lean on heavily. And I also leaned on my Sober Tahoe baddies. I actually didn't tell any of them that I had quit smoking weed while I was on that trip. But I told them this year when they were here for the reunion. And they were all like, oh my gosh, that's so inspiring. Like they were like, you should share this with people. This is a really big deal. And it was kind of cool because I was able to tell them, actually, a lot of you inspired me to do it. So I found people, I found a community, right? Maybe they didn't know directly, but they were there. I started tracking again. I found a new affirmation. I started working on my mindset again. And some little tips for people who are like, but how? How can you do this? I let my husband know that I was going to do this. I was like, I'm really going to go for it this time. I knew my pen had run out of batteries while I was out of town. And I was like, okay, that's putting distance between me and my pen. Like to actually go smoke, I would have to charge it. And that would take think time, right? I put distance between me and the flower. It was already out in my shed, but I was just kind of like, what a pain to go to it. And it was the winter months. And I was like, that's not going to be appealing to me. And then I hid some of the edibles. And then I gave some of the edibles to other people that I know still use THC products. Also, edibles were not a big pull for me. I knew that I wasn't just going to be like, oh, I'm going to eat this tonight and then go watch some TV. That was never my style. It was hitting the pen, cooking dinner, watching TV, that kind of thing. So those are some of the things that I did to really keep it going this time. But honestly, it has been so much harder to ditch than alcohol. One of the reasons is because I haven't felt any huge benefits. Like when I quit drinking, I didn't have hangovers anymore. That was huge. I had more time. I could get stuff done. Well, I got stuff done when I smoked weed. Like I got more stuff done. So it actually felt kind of defeating when I quit. I was like, I'm not getting as much stuff done now. So when I quit drinking, I actually did a thing where every single day I would write down one thing I did because I didn't drink that day. And it was a lot harder to find those things with weed. I could see, though, that I was much clearer at night. I had more energy for my family. I was so much more patient. I would get really crabby at nighttime, and we'd always just kind of joke about it. Like, Mom's just so crabby at nighttime. And even Ryan would joke about it with me, like, God, you're so crabby as we're getting into bed. But it was more of this poke fun thing. Well, it's because I had smoked weed all evening and then I was kind of coming down from it and I would be irritable. So that went away and I started being like, oh, I feel so much better in the evening. I actually started being more patient on the weekends as well. And while I don't get as much housework done on the weekends, I do get a lot more computer work done. And I put in work on no more wasted days on the weekend when I have time, or I just work on having fun with my family. But it has been hard. Totally raw dog in life, no crutches, no numbing, has been really hard. And I've had a really hard 2025. And there were many times where I could have started smoking weed to just cope with all of it. Ryan's dad was very, very sick for the first part of the year. He passed away in May. That was extremely difficult. It also meant Ryan was out of town a lot because he was going to be with his dad. When Ryan was out of town, that was a big trigger for me, and I had to work through it. I ate way more Cheetos than I cared to admit to give myself something fun to do, something naughty to do, because I didn't have that anymore. And it was something that I could kind of sneak and do. So that's become kind of a joke within our family, me talking about my Cheeto money and how I keep cash in my wallet just so I can buy a bag of Cheetos at a gas station. But, I'm staying sober, and that's really important to me. And I've learned to navigate feelings without any of it. And it's actually been so much easier to navigate those feelings. And I think I have to remember those things. I've also had to be a caretaker to my husband after he had his appendix removed, and then he got an infection during the recovery, so the recovery took longer. I really think I was able to show up so much better for him, even though I will be the first to admit that I'm not the best caretaker. I get impatient at times, but I know I was so much better with him and with the kids and everything I was having to take on because he wasn't able to. So there were so many things that were better in 2025, and I know 2025 isn't over, but during this past year, while I've been totally getting through this first year of being weed free. But one thing that crept up again was my anxiety. It got really, really bad when Ryan's dad passed away as he was getting very, very sick. It got super bad. It got to the point where I was having panic attacks while I was driving. It was super scary. I would have panic attacks while I drove over bridges. And I live somewhere where there's a lot of bridges. It was awful, but never once did I think I need to start smoking weed to fix this. Obviously, I wasn't going to smoke weed before I drove, but there was no part of me that was like, maybe this could just help mellow out life a little bit. Instead, I met with a psychiatrist. I actually called my doctor first and they couldn't get me in for a while. And I was like, I need this fixed like yesterday. I can't keep living like this. So they were like, all right, if we can fit you in, we'll let you know. But then I went online and I can do the online doctor service. Most people have access to that. And I found out I could see a psychiatrist. So I did that. I met with a psychiatrist. I told them all about it. I was like, hey, I've quit smoking weed. I'm alcohol free. I've actually cut way back on my caffeine consumption. At the time, I had basically quit all caffeine because my anxiety had gotten so bad that I knew that that would probably help as well. And I had done a lot of research, so I told the psychiatrist, I've done a lot of research on beta blockers. It sounds like they may help with the panic attack feeling. And he agreed. He asked me a lot of questions like they do at a psychiatrist appointment. And then he also set me up with a low dose of an antidepressant, which is something I would have never thought. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to do anything to help this. This is becoming so bad. I am afraid to live my day-to-day life. I'm afraid I'm going to have a panic attack at a random spot. So I started taking my low dose of Lexapro. And it felt like it helped immediately. I know it didn't. I know it actually took a while. But when it kicked in, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, this is what I've been looking for. And I take the beta blockers when I know I'm going to have to drive a long distance, or if I'm going to be singing with my choir, or even doing a daymaker's call, because those were giving me panic attacks too. No offense, daymakers. It wasn't you, it was me. But the combination of both of these things has helped me so much. And I am so glad that I had the clarity and I could trust my intuition enough to say, this isn't normal. What's happening to you? This is real. What is happening to you? You're not making it up, and you need to talk to a doctor. I had also tried a whole bunch of other holistic things. If it didn't require a prescription, I was looking for it, because I'll be the first to admit that, one, I hate making doctor's appointments, and two, I don't have great insurance. So I was a little worried that this was going to cost a lot. So I definitely tried things like kava, CBD chews. None of that helped. I was like, it's time to get some help. And I really do think it's because I knew I was very committed to my sobriety and staying on this path. So I've definitely had to make an identity shift. I see myself as sober. I have people reach out to me and ask me if I want to do a sponsorship with them, and they are drinks that contain THC, and I have so much fun replying to them and saying, sorry, I'm just over here totally raw dog in life. No THC, no alcohol, so I can't promote your product. I've also gotten to share this with my Daymakers community. I actually just recently started sharing it with them, as I wanted to make sure I was really solid on my journey and I had learned a lot from it. And I'm finding so many healthier ways to regulate my emotions. One of those has been Cheetos, and it is definitely the next one for me to tackle. But I'm just so happy to be 1 year weed-free, and I'm so excited to finally share this with you. Honestly, if you have questions, if you feel a certain way about it, reach out to me in my DMs on Instagram, or email me at sarah@nomorewasteddays.co, or leave it in the reviews, or leave it in the comments on Spotify or YouTube. I would really love to hear what you guys think about this. Now, before I keep moving on, I would love to give some key reflections on reinvention. This has taken a lot of reinvention for me. I always looked at myself as like a hippie, like a lady living off the earth, and weed was okay because it was a plant. And I was like, it's just part of my hippie vibe. I have had to reinvent that I can still have my hippie vibe. I can still have my spiritual girl vibe. I can still have my outdoorsy girl vibe without weed. And I also really had to embrace that setbacks were not erasing my progress on this journey, especially when I made it that 200 and 250 days and then went back to it. I thought, I'm not going to be able to start again. Oh my God. I had so many days, and I was like, no, you learned so much on this. You can do it differently this time. And the power of trying again until it clicks. I know I tell you all the time that keep trying, don't give up. It's only failure unless you totally quit. At no point did I totally give up the idea of becoming weed-free at some point. And then I had to remember my deeper why. One of my deeper whys, and I always tell people their whys can't be somebody else, but One of my deeper whys is being a great mom to my kids. I want to be a super awesome mom to my kids, and they are teenagers and they thankfully still talk to me and they talk to me about their problems, and I want that to keep happening. And I know when I was high, I wasn't willing to listen to them. It was just like when I was drinking and I was like, gosh, I wish I could just listen to my funny podcast and not have to have this conversation with them. I rarely feel like that anymore. Obviously, I'm a human. I'm not perfect, but it has just let me lean into that why a little bit more, that I get to just be an awesome mom. I get to be an awesome leader to my daymakers this way. I am so much more organized in my business. Go figure. Like things that used to feel so hard feel so easy. And it's just such a cool thing. This has given me clarity. And more importantly, I feel free to go wherever I want, whenever I want. I never have to worry that I'm going to be too high. And I feel authentically like myself now. I know who I am, and I still get to be that outdoorsy hippie girl. She's just sober now, and that's pretty awesome. And I just want you to remember, maybe you're not there yet with alcohol, or maybe you've started and stopped. And that's okay. It's just all part of the process. And I really hope that me sharing this story with you is letting you see that. Now, I was going to share some data on what marijuana actually does to your system and why it's beneficial to quit, but I feel like this episode has gone a little long already. So I think that I will save that for another episode in the future. And I want you to remember that things are going to feel a little bit different without Heather here, but look at it as this is a fresh season. Just like it's going to turn into fall, we're going to roll over into a new season together. And Heather's definitely going to be back as a guest because there are some topics that I know she can just do better than I can. And remember, along with that, I'm going to have other guest episodes popping in and new solo deep dives on topics that really matter to me and I can really lean into with personal story because I love sharing my personal story. I'm born to talk. I actually remember my mom buying me a little wooden bear that was holding a sign that said "Born to Talk" at a craft fair at one point when I was a kid. And it's true. I was born to talk and share my personal stories. So I'm going to do that with you and weave it all into how it relates to my alcohol-free journey. I want you to remember that we're going to be building this next season together, and it's going to be awesome. I really hope that this inspired you hearing this journey. I really hope it allowed you to see me as more of a human. I know people often say, you make it look so easy. Well, just know this past year, I was struggling from time to time. This was not completely easy, but I'm so excited to finally celebrate with you 1 year free from weed, and I can't wait to celebrate more and more with you. I would love for you to share your milestones with me, either in Instagram DMs or email at sarah@nomorewasteddays.co, or you can leave a review and share it there. Lastly, if you are ready to start your alcohol-free journey, or maybe you're alcohol-free already and you're ready to start your weed-free journey now, and you need some extra support, I highly recommend downloading my free 10 mantras. They are going to help you retrain your mindset, and even though they're written specifically for alcohol, they can definitely be used for THC as well. You can download those by heading to nomorewasteddays.co/10-mantras, or just head to the link in the show notes of this episode. I am beyond grateful for you listening to this podcast, and I'm excited to share many, many more celebrations with you like this one and many, many more stories. If you haven't already, be sure to leave a review for this podcast. It really is the thing that helps podcasts grow the most. And thank you so much for listening, and I'll be in your ear in the next episode.